Welcome guys, welcome to today's discussion. Today we will discuss about elementary particles. Now this is the first lecture of elementary particle series. This is an introduction to elementary particles. Upon hearing elementary particle, what do you think? Primarily you think about three particles, this electron, proton and neutron. Generally, these three are called basic building blocks of an atom. But elementary particle is a huge world. Generally, elementary particles are divided into two categories. Depending upon their spin, they are divided in two categories like fermion with half integral spin, C, half h cut, 3 by 2 h cut, 5 by 2 h cut, etc. and etc. And bosons of integral spin, h cut, 2 h cut, 3 h cut and so on. Now, these bosons are further divided into two more categories, meson and photon. You guys have already been introduced with photon. It is a very familiar particle, a quanta of energy. Now, this meson category is further divided into three more categories, that is pi meson, k meson and eta meson. For the category pi meson, there are mainly three particles, pi plus, pi minus and pi 0. Similarly, for k meson, there are two particles, k plus and k naught. Sometimes these pi mesons are called pions and these k mesons are called kaons. In my total series, I shall define this pi meson and k meson as pions and kaons. So, don't get confused in the latter. And the remaining, eta meson. In this category, there is only one particle called eta naught. Now, the fermions. Basically, it is divided into two primary categories like lepton and baryon. In lepton category, there are primarily 6 particles or 6 types of particles: electron, tauon, muon, and electron neutrino, tauon neutrino, muon neutrino. These 6 particles mainly comprise the lepton family. Now the baryon family. Now this baryon family is further divided into two more parts. They are hyperon and nucleon. In nucleon family, there is only two particles, this proton and this neutron. As you know that the nucleus of an atom is comprised of these two particles only. That's why they are called nucleons. Now the hyperons. There are further 4 categories in this type of particles. They are lambda hyperon, omega hyperon, xi hyperon, sigma hyperon. In your textbooks, sometimes it is called KSI hyperon, so whatever may be. Now, in lambda hyperon group, there is only one particle called lambda naught. In omega hyperon family, there is only one particle, omega minus. In xi hyperon family, there are two particles, xi naught and xi minus. And the last but not the least, the sigma hyperon family. It consists of 3 particles, sigma plus, sigma naught and sigma minus. Now this is a very simple structure of elementary particle. There are further more and more particles like vector bosons, W plus minus bosons, Z bosons, delta particles. There are more and more particles. Okay, but for the sake of simplicity, we shall discuss about only this family. I know that this picture is a little bit clumsy to you, but bear with me guys, because this is the most simplest structure I have. In your textbooks you can find other table type structures, but believe me, this is the most simple structure, and you have to remember all of these particles. So this is your first task, to remember this structure, this family structure. Now these kaons and these hyperons are together called strange particles. The cause I shall discuss in this video later. And these pi mesons, k mesons and hyperons, they are altogether called hadrons. Okay. Now the unit in this particle physics world, we deal with energy units, mainly energy units like EV. What is an EV? 1 EV equals to the energy acquired by an electron when it passes through a space where there is a potential difference of 1 volt only. So 1 electron volt means 1 electronic charge into 1 volt, that is 1.6 × 10⁻⁻19 joule. But this unit is inconveniently small for our practical usage. So what are the practical units? Mainly this million or mega electron volts, giga electron volts, tera electron volt, peta electron volt, and etc. and etc. But for our practical usage and theoretical usage, we shall stuck with this mega electron volt. Okay. Now, as I have told you before, that every unit we shall use will be in energy unit. See, energy unit is MeV. So what will be the mass unit? Equal to mc square. So m equal to E by c square. What is the unit of E? That is MeV, and c square is c square. So mass will be defined by MeV per c square unit. In some cases we can take, for simplicity, c equals to 1. Okay. And for the momentum, P equal to mc square by c, so it become MeV per c. So these three are the main units of our theoretical purpose. Now there are some useful quantities, or say quantum numbers, and some formulas you have to know before entering in the particle world. What are those? Those are these quantities. You know, this is a charge. B stands for baryon quantum number. L stands for lepton quantum number. S stands for strangeness quantum number. Y denote the hypercharge. I denote isospin. And what is I3? It is the third component of isospin. And the multiplicity. Actually, multiplicity is a mathematical term. I shall discuss in this video. It is later. And y is equal to s plus b. Y is equal to 2 into q minus I3. This thing is very, very important. Actually, it is called Gell-Mann-Nisijima formula. And the third one is a very known one. 2i plus 1 equals to multiplicity. Okay. Now, this is a very important table for you. I have made this exclusive table for you because of there are theories about these fundamental forces, but no proper table for this. See, if you can watch table for once, you will know that okay, this is the main important parts and I have to remember these only. So in our nature there are four fundamental forces, or in a technical word, interactions. What are they? Gravitational, electromagnetic, strong and weak. Between these four, in your 12th standard you have already know about gravitational and electromagnetic. Now in your graduation standard you will know about strong and weak interactions. Now the first one is range. As we all know, by theoretically these two forces are inverse square law. So as r tends to infinity, f tends to 0. So theoretically the range becomes infinity. That's why this range is infinity. And strong forces are mainly prevalent in nuclear structure type ranges. So it is more prominent in of the order of 10 to the power minus 15 meter type or Fermi type range. And weak interactions, they are the weak interactions have range of the order of 10 to the power minus 17 meter. This is the most small range between these between these four interactions. But according to relative strength value, it is very clear that strong interaction is actually very strong interaction. That's why its relative strength is 1. It is the most strong interaction. Actually its name is strong. Okay, jokes apart, the weakest of these four interactions are gravitational interactions. See the number of the order of 10 to the power minus 40. Then there comes the weak 10 to the power minus 13 and the electromagnetic 10 to the power minus 3. Now life of decay, sometime it is called interaction time, sometime it is called characteristics time. Actually it defines the actual interaction time of these four forces. In this table it is very clear that the time of interaction is highest in gravitational type fields. Actually it is very common because gravitational force have an infinite range, so the time of interaction must be the highest, and time of interaction is the smallest in strong type of interactions. Now what particles gets affected by these interactions? Actually gravitational forces are not that much important in our particle physics or elementary particle physics chapter, because generally gravitational forces are prominent in astronomical entities or astronomical quantities like sun, moon, this type of macroscopic world. Gravitational force is prominent, but when the distance between two particles is very small, or the particle itself is very small like an atom or a subatomic particle, gravitational force is not that much important. See the relative strength 10 to the power minus 40. so it is not that much important, and we shall not discuss about this force in this particle physics chapter. Now from this table it is very clear that gravitation affects almost every particle in this universe. And what about electromagnetic? Its name suggests, where there is a charge, electromagnetic field is there. So all type of charged particles gets affected by electromagnetic force or interaction. What about the strong interaction? Hadrons. What are they? I have already told you. Pions, kaons and hyperons. These three are called hadrons. So they take part in strong interaction, so they gets affected in the strong interaction. And what about weak interaction? Hadrons and leptons. Those 6 particles, tau, muon, electron and 3 types of neutrino, those are leptons and the hadrons. They gets affected in weak interaction, means they take part in weak interactions. Now in this particle interactions or particle reactions, there is always a mediator particle or a exchange particle. For gravitational interaction, it is called graviton. Remember, graviton is still an hypothetical particle. No one have been discovered it yet. So you may be the luckiest person in the world who will discover the graviton and get the Nobel. Now what about electromagnetic field? As only charged particles gets affected, its mediator or the exchange particle must be none other than photon. What about strong and weak? Now for strong interactions, see, the hadrons takes part, and hadrons are made of quarks, and theoretical as well as practical experiments have already shown that quarks have a mediator which is called gluon. So the mediator for strong interactions is gluon. In some of your textbooks you can find that the mediator for strong interaction is quark. That's also true. You can get the number in your exam, but in more detailed manner, gluon is the actual mediator. Now for the weak interaction, I have not shown these W plus minus and Z bosons in the previous family tree of elementary particles. These are relatively new and of greater importance than your BSc graduation syllabus. So I have excluded these exclusive particles in the previous tree. Only you have to know that yes, there are some extra bosons, extra heavy bosons like W plus minus boson and Z boson. These are not important for your graduation purpose. Now the most important 2 columns of this whole table, conserved quantity and not conserved quantity. Now see, I am least bothered about gravitational force in particle world. That's why I have left these 2 blank. And it's quite interesting that only I and I3 have been shown here. Why? Because there are several quantities, several quantum numbers that some of them gets conserved in EM or strong and weak, and some of them not, like Y, S, B, etc, etc. But we are primarily concerned about I and I3, because in your exam as well as theoretical questions you will have to determine whether an interaction is EM, strong or weak, and who will determine that? This I and I3. If both of them gets conserved in any particle reaction, the reaction will be of strong type. If both of them will not be conserved in a particle reaction, then it will be of type weak. And if I3 is conserved but I not, then that is exclusively the electromagnetic interaction. So in your exam hall and your book, there will be sufficient questions about, is this particle reaction possible, or say determine the interaction about this particle reaction. Then we will determine about the conservation of I and I3, and depending upon these three different situation, we can infer that yes, that interaction proceeds through electromagnetic or strong or weak. I shall discuss about them in later lectures. And now the example. These are the most simple examples only for your exam purpose. You can find many more examples in your any textbooks. So let's proceed. But before I proceed to more slides, I have to remember you one thing, that if you are new to my channel, then don't forget to subscribe and click on the bell icon to get the regular updates, because this will be a series of lectures, elementary particle series. So to get the regular updates, you have to be a regular subscriber. Okay, now let's proceed. Now we shall discuss about antiparticles. Before I further proceed about antiparticles, I have to tell you one thing, that particle physics is very much a theoretical field as well as practical field. Why? Because in earlier days, mathematically some particles were inferred before their actual discovery, and after some years experimental physicists discovered them in the practical particle accelerators or some other devices. An antiparticle is most important between all the theoretical concepts. See, in physics there is always a symmetry in natural laws. The mathematical symmetry shows that there should be antiparticle to each of the particles. In my first slide we have some particles, that was the family tree of particles only. I have not shown any type of antiparticles there. Okay, though every particle has its own antiparticle, and these antiparticles have been theoretically inferred by some prominent scientists, and later they have been discovered in the laboratory. Now you cannot find any antiparticle freely in nature. Those antiparticles which we will discuss are all created in lab conditions. And the most interesting part is that these antiparticles have mass exactly the same about its particle, but some physical features like charge, spin, trajectory, magnetic moment, they can be different, or actually in many cases they are exactly opposite to its particle counterpart, such as positron, which has charge +1, and its counter particle is electron, which has charge -1. Actually the first antiparticle discovered was positron. I think in 1930 Paul Dirac already predicted the antiparticle positron, and after 2 years in 1932 Anderson showed the existence of antiparticle positron. This discovery of the positron is the evidence of existence of antiparticles for the first time. Then after 2 or 3 years comes antiproton, then antineutron, and then so on. Now there are some particles also which are their own antiparticle, like photon, and we will denote these antiparticles like a bar over its head. Okay, now I have already told you that antiparticle is just an anti-replica of your particle counterpart. As we denote every particle with some set of quantum numbers, so we shall have to denote these antiparticles with that set of quantum numbers, but the values will exactly the opposite. Suppose for an electron, if the lepton number is +1, then for a positron it is -1. This is the very interesting part about the particle antiparticle interactions. What will happen when a pair of particle and antiparticle is brought together? Suppose this is a particle, I have denoted it by X, and this is an antiparticle, I have denoted it with X bar. They are coming together. This is coming from this to this direction, and this is coming from this to this direction. What will happen after some time? They will touch each other, and what will be the result? Boom. Means they will annihilate each other and only energy will left. More technically or theoretically you can say only photons will left. Okay, I know that there is some questions, but still the biggest question, if a particle antiparticle pair can annihilate each other, then why do we exist? Because at the time of Big Bang, a theory says that there were exactly 50% of particles, 50% of antiparticles, so they should annihilate each other and we would not have existed now, but we exist. That means there are some violations to this particle antiparticle interactions. Some particles get annihilated by these particle antiparticle interactions and the matter world dominates now. Theoretical scientists are doing their research to find the answer. Let them do their job and let me do my job to teach you about the primary particle physics world. Now let's proceed to next one. Lepton number. We shall denote lepton number by L. L is actually NL minus NL bar. What is NL? It is the number of leptons in a particle reaction. And what is NL bar? It is the number of anti-leptons in that particular particle reaction. So it is very clear that L is a number. Sometimes L is called lepton quantum number. Actually it is a mathematical idea and it is among some conserved quantum numbers. There are several conserved quantum numbers in particle physics world. Lepton is one of them. Now in 1956 the famous Cohen-Rins experiment confirms the existence of neutrino, and this existence of neutrino was inferred by L conservation theory. See, in this experiment two type of reactions would have happened. There was 50-50 probability of this one and this one, but in actual case the experiment shows that this is the reaction that happened and this is the reaction that never happened. Why? Then comes the idea of L conservation, because see, in this particle reaction lepton number is conserved. This is entrance channel, this is exit channel, and delta L equals to 0, so L is conserved. But in this reaction L is not conserved, so this wouldn't be a feasible reaction and the experiment supports it. Now before I go to baryon number, I have to tell you one thing, that in your exam there will be questions like, will this particle interaction be feasible or possible or not? In that cases we have to consider about some conserved quantum quantities. First of all, we have to see whether the charge is conserved or not between the entrance and exit channels. If charge is not conserved, the reaction won't happen. And thereafter we shall consider about some quantum numbers like L, B, S and etc depending upon the type of interactions or type of question. So lepton number is very much important, and by its name you have already know that lepton quantum number is important for lepton particles like that electron, tau, muon, electron neutrino, tau neutrino, muon neutrino, these type of particles. So for them lepton number is +1. See, for electron it is +1, but for positron it is -1. So L equal to +1 for all lepton particles and L equal to -1 for all antileptons. See this electron neutrino bar, it is an antilepton, that's why -1. Now one more important concept quantum number, that is baryon number. It is defined by B. Now before I explain why this 1/3 comes, I have to tell you that the idea, the mathematical idea about baryon number was established long before theoretically. Actually, this idea of baryon quantum number supports the quark model, but quark model is relatively new. So first baryon has been introduced theoretically, then quark model was discovered. So scientists changes the baryon number of those quarks rather than changing the mother theory about baryon number. Okay, so each quark was assigned by 1/3 baryon number. Why? Because experiment shows that 3 quarks made 1 baryon. So each baryon consists of 3 quarks. That's why each quark have baryon number equal to 1/3, and that's why this B, the definition of this B has this 1/3. NQ minus NQ bar. NQ is the quark number and NQ bar is the number of antiquark in a particular reaction. Now this B can have 3 values: +1 obviously for baryons, -1 obviously for antibaryons, and what about 0 for the rest of the particle world. Like for lepton, lepton B is 0, for meson B is 0. Now hypercharge is denoted by Y. It is also a conserved quantity number, but for only strong interactions. In case of weak interaction, Y does not conserve. Y is defined by sum of S and B, but after the discovery of charm, bottom and top quark numbers, it is actually more importantly it is defined as Y is equal to S plus B plus C plus B plus T. Okay, this is more advanced formula. Now comes the strangeness quantum number. It is denoted by S. This strangeness is associated with a particular group of particles. That particles are called strange particles. I have already told you before that pions, kaons, kaons and hyperons are collectively called strange particles. Why? Because there are certain characteristics which are unique, very unique. Experiments showed that these type of particles are created very easily in particle collisions, but they decay more slowly than theoretically expected. Moreover, these particles always produced in pairs, but their decay process is very independent. They decay independently. Their production is called associative production, and decay is individual decay. These two strange characteristics made them strange particles. Now strangeness is defined as S equal to ns minus ns bar. Ns is the number of strange quarks and ns bar is the number of strange antiquarks. See, this is a very simple example of features of strange particles. Pi minus plus p, this reaction gives lambda naught and k naught. This is hyperon, this is kaon. So this is a associative production, and these two strange particles have been produced in pair, but their decay process is entirely different. And most interesting part is that they decay isolated, like lambda naught decays into a 1 proton and pi minus, whereas the k naught meson decays into 2 pions. This makes them unique. And S is plus 1 for strange particles, or rather say particles, and minus 1 for antiparticles. But there are some exceptions, like S may be minus 2, minus 3 depending upon situations, and for particular exclusive particles that becomes true. In my upcoming lectures I shall show you the exceptions also. Now next, multiplicity. Actually multiplicity is entirely a mathematical idea. It is not related to only particle physics. It is related to multiset type of mathematics. In very simple language, multiplicity is the number which defines that a particular quantity is repeated by how many times. Suppose 45 equals to what? 5 into 3 into 3? Actually 5 into 9, so I can divide 9 by 2 3s. Look, this 3 is repeating itself twice, so the multiplicity of 3 is 2 and multiplicity of 5 is 1. This is the most simple example. Now let us do some maths. This is a very simple polynomial, y square equals minus 2y plus 1. Okay, what are the roots? Actually it is y minus 1 whole square, that is y minus 1 into y minus 1, that is 2 roots, 1 1. So the root 1 is repeating itself twice. So what is the multiplicity of that root? 2. Suppose we have a quantum number, say that is x. Then what is the mathematical form of multiplicity? 2x plus 1. I have previously showed you that multiplicity 2i plus 1 is equal to multiplicity. Actually in particle physics world we use multiplicity equal to 2i plus 1. I is the isospin quantum number. If we know the I, or if we know the multiplicity, we can define the other quantity. Suppose for pions, what is the multiplicity? 3. So 2i plus 1 is equal to 3. So I is equal to 1. Depending upon the value of I3 will change. Isospin. Before proceeding, I want to remember you that isospin and that I3, that was called third component of isospin. These two are very important for particle reactions as they determine the interaction type, whether it is electromagnetic or strong or weak. So in any particle reactions you have to determine whether I and I3 are conserved or not, and to determine the conservation of I and I3 you must know the values of I and I3 of those particles. So I and I3 are very much important for you, not only for your knowledge but for your exams also. Now the term isospin, though it has a term spin, it is not actually spin. it is a basic mathematical idea which has some similarity to spin, rather I say similarity to angular quantum number. This isospin quantum number behaves like mathematical definitions of spin, but it is not physically a spin. Generally, isospin comes from the word isotopic spin, but isotopic spin is not the actual word. Physicists say it isobaric spin, and I3 is its third component. What is third component? Suppose you have a three-dimensional vector. It has three components: the x, the y, and the z. The z component is called third component. I can define 1, 2, 3. 1 is for x, 2 for y, 3 for z. So I3 is actually the z projection of I. Now I am giving you the information that I3 is the z component. So who has z component? A vector. Actually, I is sometimes behaves like a vectorial quantity. Now this concept of I also supports the concept of quark model. I have not discussed it yet. In my coming lectures I shall discuss about the quark model. But before quark model there was I. Why? Because experimental scientists find out that there are some particles which were affected in strong interactions equally, but they have different charges. So they thought that those particles are the same state of same particle. Suppose there are three charges. They thought that the mother particle is one. It is the three different states of that mother particle. Isospin symmetry supports that fact, or isospin symmetry is the mathematical formulation of that fact, and that fact in latter leads to the quark concept. Now the third component of I. Now before I proceed to that one, in some mathematical idea, isospin is a vectorial identity. Okay, so it have three projections, and the most important projection is z component. Actually, the isospin quantum number comprised of two quantum numbers, I and I3. First you have to determine the I, then the I3. Now how to determine that? 2i plus 1 equal to multiplicity. If you know the multiplicity, you can define I like pions, I equals to 1. Now for hadrons or spin half particles, we have what? We have I equals to half. How? See, in that type of particles, 2i plus 1 equals to 2. So we have I equals to half. If I equals to half, its z component can align itself to either plus half or minus half. Plus half is associated with up quark and minus half is associated with down quark. So in case of hadrons, we can define I3 as half of Nu minus Nd. Nu is number of up quarks in a particular reaction and Nd is number of down quarks in that particular reaction. Now this is for spin half particles. What about, sorry, it was for hadrons. What about for spin half system? Now for spin half system, I is sigma I by 2. What is sigma I? Sigma I is Pauli matrices. In atomic physics and of course in quantum mechanics, there are three separate matrices, 2 by 2 matrices. They are called Pauli matrices, and I3 is equal to sigma 3 by 2. Now in this lecture I have not shown what about sigma 1, sigma 2, sigma 3, what are their values, what are their characteristics, because it is not important in here. If I have time, then in my later lectures I shall try to show you about that Pauli matrices, but it is not relevant in my introduction lecture. Now let's come to a very important formula, Gell-Mann-Nishijima formula. You have already familiar with the Gell-Mann-Nishijima formula, but the original formula was like Q equal to I3 plus half of S plus B. It was the original Gell-Mann-Nishijima formula. Then after the quark model, there comes three more quark numbers, or say quark quantum numbers, or in your some of your texts they are quark flavors. What are they? Charm, bottom and top, CBT. So the more modern form is Q is equal to I3 plus half of S plus B plus C plus B plus T. Now if we can put this S plus B plus C plus T with Y, as we know that Y is equal to S plus B, or rather accurately S plus B plus C plus B plus T. So we can modify this relation like Y equal to 2Q minus I3. How? Now you have to do the math of your own. Put S plus B plus C plus B by T Y and rearrange this equation, and you will find Y is equal to 2Q minus I3. It is the most compact and modified form of Gell-Mann-Nishijima formula. In our later lectures, we shall use these quantum numbers and this formula frequently. Okay guys, so this is the end of our today's discussion. For handwritten notes, please put your email ID in the comment box below, and if you think that this lecture was helpful for you, then please give us a thumbs up and share this video with your friends. See you in next lecture. Bye bye.